The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below. Hello everybody, and welcome to the first video of website subscriber entries to the 2018 Orchestration Challenge, featuring Bartok's with pipes and drums from his Out of Doors suite. Now, there will be a video called 2018 Orchestration Challenge Rules and Roster, and that will have all of the names of the entrants and the names of the videos in which they're going to appear, but I'm just going to give you a brief rundown on some of the information there. These website entries are going to get about 10 minutes plus of analysis, and the analysis will be along the lines of some words about the layout, talking about the scoring of the piece in terms of how each entrant is choosing to arrange the work, and of course leading to some thoughts about texture, balance, and function. And as far as the website entries go, the first three videos to be released, A, B, and C, will be composed of international entries. In other words, entries from every country but the United States. And then the videos titled D, E, and F will be for the US entrants, and I'm going to leave that one public and open for about 2 weeks. So hopefully you get a chance to see your entry over the remaining time in this month that I'm going to evaluate these scores. Hopefully it'll go pretty quickly. Not quite as many entries as last time, but that's actually good for me. Last year's Orchestration Challenge got like 84 scores, and that probably would have been too much for me to evaluate given the time that I have right now. But I think that this is just perfect, a little over 50 entries. So, with those introductory comments, let's get right to the first score by Arne Bremer. And this is a really, really cool score, very, very different from anything I would have imagined, and that's a good thing. There are a few issues, and I'll talk about them in a minute, but first, let's hear his playback audio along to the first page of score. I have to say, that is a really fun way to start this whole series of evaluations. Really, really great entry. Now, let's talk a little bit about how it's scored and some things that could possibly be improved about this. First of all, this sort of big time signature style is really more of a film score kind of a thing. Yeah, I mean, I do see it in contemporary music from time to time, but really, speaking just in terms of this piece as a piece of 20th century concert music, I think that it's safer and easier on everybody just to mark the changes as they are in a standard way. And aside from that, it's pretty good. I noticed that you have numbers over every single bar. Once again, that is more of a film score sort of convention. Still all right. There are some things, though. You have to imagine that this is going to be a concert orchestra, right? So they have, and just with the stipulations of what I prescribed of having a series of percussionists, I think that this is a bit of overkill. I mean, I can see why you did it in terms of having you wanted your xylophone in there, you wanted to have your three percussionists. So you had a bass drum and cymbals attached to each other. It probably would have been better just to bend the rules a bit and have 4 percussionists plus timpanist. And then that way you could get all this in, because I don't think that this is really that useful of a way of scoring this percussion. It's more of a small band type thing, or even like a drum set kind of a thing to have the cymbals attached to the bass drum. I mean, yeah, that happens sometimes especially with pocket orchestras. but still. The other thing, too, is that at least for the purposes of this challenge, the staff size is quite small, right? I kind of wanted my entries to have a slightly bigger staff size, and you can see that there's tons of wasted space in between these staves, right? So, I mean, in some places, like right here, it makes sense, but in terms of, like, say, the space between the trombones and the tuba, or the brass section and the percussion section and so on, there was a lot of room to spare. And then, you could have gotten the whole first 21 bars into one big page, right? I'm not complaining, but still. Now here you mark your pizzicato, your doodle-doodle, that kind of approach as grace notes, as appoggiaturas going into the beat. And I think it's just better to write them out, okay? Because it's just confusing the way you've done it. It's almost like you've got all these modern standards that you are putting into your work, and then you're using a very old approach here, which is kind of more Mozart kind of an approach, right? So better just to write everything out. It's very, very fast for pizzicato. I would almost wonder whether or not this should be done divisi. If you had the first two notes played by half of the firsts, and then the second two notes played by the other half of the first. It's, what did they for? I mean, it's really just better just to write all that out and to see if you can split it up a bit, because it is very, very fast. And then also, you've got these fast pizzicati going right into snap pizz. And usually with snap pizzicato, you need a little bit of time to prepare. It's hard to go 1, 2, 3, 4, snap, 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 right? There just is almost no time for the fingers to get ready to do these snap pizzicatos. I mean, it's really cool to add that effect, but still. Then you've got Cullen battuto, non divisi. That will work because you've got your open D above and then A on the G string. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a quieter kind of a sound, and these horns are going to stick out, but that's fine. Now, about the dynamic mixing, there really are a lot of different instruments playing at a lot of different dynamics, and you're putting a lot of work onto the conductor. Now, I've said this before, it's probably good that this particular approach is critiqued right from the very beginning, and that is that if everybody is playing at different dynamics, a lot of the times the players have no idea what the other players are doing, right? It is always best to try to have everybody at the same dynamic level as much as you possibly can, at the same marked level, and then just to have the parts which are assigned balance themselves out by the way that they are working. Now, that is not always possible, so in which case you try to have a very, very basic balance. The instruments that play softer, say strings and winds, will get the louder dynamics, and then instruments that play a bit louder, just in general, get marked down 1 or 2 degrees, okay? So that's a better way to deal with it than to have 4 different dynamic levels, right? Because, like, you've got players who are listening to each other, and they're thinking, wow, that is a loud mezzo piano that person is playing, because I'm marked mezzo piano, wow, and they are playing really loud. Or they might get the idea, oh yeah, I'm supposed to play a little bit under here. Okay, well, that's all fine, and it's perfectly acceptable, and there are some great concert scores that are like that, but you want to avoid it as much as you possibly can, because it just puts more work on the conductor. The conductor will say, hey, you are mezzo piano, and the trumpets are mezzo forte, and then everybody else is forte, okay? So play a little bit under. And the time that I just took to explain that, of about 5 or 10 seconds, is money out of the pocket of the manager or the management of the orchestra. So yeah, so try to ease off on that a bit. Now this is fine. You've got dynamic effects. That is cool. All right. Now I'm really trying not to evaluate past this barrier here of 21 bars for the website entries, and actually Arne scored the entire movement, which is great. I think that's totally fantastic, and I wish that this were a Patreon entry of at the dotted brev or longa level, and then I would I would happily dig into the entire thing and make it a single video lesson. All right, so I think I talked about the dynamic mixing a little too much, but that's just to sort of establish it. Hopefully people are going to watch all these videos in order and not just their own entry and what I had to say about it. So yeah, so everybody really try to watch all the videos. It's going to be a few hours of listening, but it's going to be really enjoyable, and I am enjoying the heck out of myself right now, actually, I must say. So this little idea creeping in here in the Shallow register is really nice. I like that. And this is cool too. Now here's something. The tuba did not need to be mezzo forte here, right? It's carrying the melody. It should be forte. And don't worry about it being overbearing in terms of the cellos. That's all fine. See, when you mark it mezzo forte, it is really hard to tell where the melody is coming from, right? In fact, I would say in general, the melody is so mixed into the rhythm at the beginning that it's hard to tell where it is emerging, right? You've got timpani and cellos expressing the melody, and it is so rhythmically done, I can't really, when I listen to your mock-up and I sort of look at it on the page, it's hard to tell, like, where that is coming from. Okay, so, and this decrescendo here, I don't think that that's a good idea. I think it's better just to say, look, everybody's forte here, right? Forget about this mezzo forte thing. Everybody's forte, and I can really hear the melody coming in. I think it's kind of cool that you trade off between instruments. I think that's neat. And, you adorn that from above. And that is really cool, too. And then have the bassoons fall into the melody and octaves here. It's good. I will say you have a texture here that is sort of medium large at the beginning. But all that said, I still think that the way that the melody is stated here could be more emphatic. This is really, really cool. The closed horns, stopped horns. And then below, of course, this is too low to be stopped. So it's very conscientious kind of scoring. Now, it would have probably been better to have these paired up a little differently, to have this be the first and the third, and this be the second and fourth, because that is their natural domain. They're just going to be both more secure if you do it like that, rather than if you couple them up. Now, I notice, so now I'm looking at your score, and you have got the whole 1-3-2-4 thing, the more Bartok kind of approach. And, you're trying to simplify it, and that's good. But did you notice that I just made a mistake in reading it because it wasn't standard? Sure, I should be more conscientious and look at this and say, oh yeah, that's the way that is. But really, it's scored a certain way for a reason, and you should try to hold to that, even if it makes things complex about, like, two voice writing on the staff and so on. It's just easier for the conductor to immediately pick it up and look at it and so on. Now, going on here, this is nice. I think that the melody is much better stated here. Although, it really, you're splitting it up, trumpets and oboes. That's pretty cool. It gets a little weak here. Did you notice? Like, I'm seeing it both in the score and in the in the playback, because we're sort of losing the trumpet, except for just pushing on the offbeats. Okay, and that works. That offbeat thing works great with the xylophone, but there's a little bit of continuity that is lost. I mean, it's nice here in the cellos, but still, might need a little bit more work right there. Okay, and then this is all really nice. The way that you end that passage, bump, bum, bump, bum, bum, bum. I thought this was really well done. Really nice. And then, with that little push there in the horns. Okay. Really good entry, and just really enjoyed looking at it. And once again, I wish I had the time. Wish that you had the priority to have more of an evaluation for your efforts. But look, maybe this can get performed somewhere. So if you do get this ready to be performed by an orchestra, then yeah, just make make your style, your house style, a little bit more traditional. Maybe maybe you can leave this the way it is, 1, 3, 2, and 4. But maybe just do 2-voice scoring on this and put everything in the right order, even though that's a bit of a hassle. And put this into, maybe divide it up a little because it's so fast in between the desks of the first violins, and give yourself time to prepare for these. That would be my big concern. And also just spread this out over 4 percussionists. All right. And don't have this cymbals attached to bass drum thing. It's okay to cheat a little bit. I mean, I want people to hold within the parameters of a certain format, but if there's just no way around it, then it's fine. But what I'm really trying to avoid is like 16 timpani, right? I want to avoid the kind of orchestra in your imagination that you will never get. And that way, you might bend the rules here and there with a score like this, and it's beautifully, the approach is beautifully done and very subtle and very fun. And that's fine. This score would probably get performed even just as is. Okay, there will still be some problems, some errors in it, but some stuff that the conductor will have to balance, and some other things that are uncomfortable and the players will complain about. But I've already told you how to fix those, right? One last thing, just remember, Cullen is never as loud as you think it's going to be. Even taking into account that, and thinking to yourself, well, Cullen is really not going to be that loud. Well, I'll score it under. You will probably, even at that, be disappointed at how soft it is. Keep in mind, the most famous example of Col Legno is the opening of Mars. But you've got the entire string section playing an octave there, right? And so you've got 30 players on a G and the other 30 on a G below that, I think, is how it goes. And it's just really not that, like, unless you had 60 or 70 players going bum 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 on, a couple of strings, then it's going to be really hard to hear. Even the Berlioz example from Symphonie Fantastique is not as loud as it could be. Okay, so those are my comments on your score, Arne. I know I went a bit over time in evaluating that, but it's a really good way to start and really a fine score. And there's so much more that I could say about it, about how you've scored out some of your some of the approaches of the piano score into your orchestra. But I think you get the picture. So, those were the things I think you need to fix before you get this ready for a standard orchestra. And good job. And now let's go on to the next score. I hope you don't mind that I played the mock-up along to the score first before going into these comments, and I think that I'm going to take that approach with each of these entries because it just saves all the introductory stuff. Now, this was really a fun score. It's really different from the last one. This one has more murky, more direct textures and sounds and functions. Really, really fun. Actually, my suggestion here would be that if you're not going to use a particular instrument, like trumpets and C, or, all these upper winds, just for this particular challenge, and you can just leave them out, right? You can select them and hide them if you are in Sibelius, or there's a bunch of different approaches that you could use. I think it's really, really fun, but I'm going to tell you right away that these harps could have just stayed home, right? Nobody is going to hear them at all. If you have these big, firm, thick, loud textures, the harps are just going to disappear. They're going to be swallowed up. I don't know if you have seen my evaluation of or my score study of the first part of Mars, the Bringer of War from Holst's Planets, that series that's going on right now. But something that I think I mentioned there is that the harps that are playing octaves, bum 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 bum, and then backwards bum 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 bum, along with the Cullen strings, are pretty much, they could also stay home just for that bar. Those bars, really, they don't really make much of a difference. But I think they're thrown in there just so that the harpists can have some fun, really. But they don't add that much to the sound. And in this case, when you've got this big bottom end here, trombones, even at mezzo piano, which this did not need to be mezzo piano, by the way, right? You have contrabassoon, you have contrabass at pizzicato, and interspersed with snap pizzicato. And you've got these timpani playing seconds, which was a strategy that I also used, D and E seconds. So there really is no need for the harps. I mean, they're completely secondary, right? You've got enough texture, you've got enough weight there. This just seems to be adding the piano part to the score, and it's just completely, so just throw it out. You don't need it. You've already got a really cool scoring approach here. So this is a pretty solid approach there for the timpani. I would say probably better to accent right here to punch more, right? And as far as that goes, you could have also thrown in alternate pitches here for the trombones too, to sort of match the tuba and everything else. And also gotten the A alongside the tuba's B flat in the contrabassoon too, because if the tuba is going to crank this pitch with the against the contrabassoon and the double bass, you're not really going to hear anything else, right? That's just going to be, and along with the timpani, that's just going to take over. So you might as well just leave it out, right? That's the way I would look at it right there. Now, once again, we've got cellos and atu bassoons playing the melody, and that is a really good approach. There could have been a bit more articulation here, like maybe staccato, maybe a tenuto mark on this note here, just to kind of bring it out a little bit more. You don't need to do this backing off stuff. People are backing off a lot. I know, so the last score, there were, I think that you wanted to bring out the melody, right? So you drop the trombones and the timpani underneath it. But you don't need to do that. Just have everybody be playing mezzo forte and have this, say sforzando, have accents, have staccato, have some other kind of way of making the sound pointier, and it'll stick out just fine. You don't need to bring the trombones down to, you don't even need to be mezzo piano here. This could be mezzo forte, and it would balance great. I mean, if this is mezzo piano and this is forte, it just doesn't make any sense. I know that people are really talking about how loud trombones are all the time and you really have to bring them down and stuff, but a lot of that is done by the conductor and done by the players themselves, who hear themselves in the middle of the sound and find their way in the picture, at least, assuming that these are really fine professional players. This is neat, bringing in the English horn right there. Keep in mind that this is going to be a really fat, low note right in here. It's going to work. It's going to be all right, but it's right kind of down there at the very limit of, of control for the player. But still fine. Now here, I don't think you needed to go to a single player. And don't say one, by the way. Just say one or two. Tell us which player you want to play, right? You don't say with one, because then the player, the copyist who is copying the score out into parts will say, one, which one, right? So don't say one. That's not a marking. All right, say, if you want the first player to play, just say one, period. Or, if you're old school, you could do Roman numeral 1. But yeah, don't say one, people. Okay, here's another one. Trombones, one. No, just say first trombone, or just say one and then like the little 0 next to it, if you know how to do that, to make the little tiny O that kind of floats around. That's the French way of doing it, and Italian way. but don't say A1. Okay. This is neat, using that kind of fatter, lower sound of the English horn, and along with the bassoons. No bass clarinet. It would have been kind of cool. Maybe, what if this were a bass clarinet line doubling at the octave with the English horn? That would have been really awesome, right? And it's bringing a new flavor into this. Of course, you're doubling to a degree with trombones, which is going to fatten the sound. You're here. You have a balance problem. You're going to one player in the bassoons and one player in the trombones. That trombone is really what you're going to hear here, not necessarily the flavor of the bassoon will be all that important. Now, of course, you're getting the overtones by having the English horn above at an octave, so that helps, but it still is not a perfect solution. I really love the contra bassoon part all the way through here. These should be accented, right? Because you've got sforzando in the melody. And all this stuff here in the harp, you want some sort of plucked sound to stand out, then give it to the cellos and the violas, right? Or the violas and the first and second violins. And then you will hear some of these lines come out. I guess most of this could not be played by the violins, like just a couple of notes here and there. But violas and cellos playing pizzicato, maybe divisi cellos, right? You always have the option of having half the players playing this melody line and the other half going pizzicato, right, on a different staff, if you want to get your mock-up playback to sound better. Okay, so in terms of layout, it's all good. I like the way that you formatted this. The staff size is a bit bigger, so that's easier for me to demonstrate on the screen. I like the fact that you did it in landscape, and that's awesome. Really helpful for me in these evaluations. These horns are cool. Now, once again, it really should be... here you are asking for B octaves. So to do this correctly, with 1 and 2 on the top staff and 3 and 4 on the bottom staff, it really should be the same part, right? It should look the same. You should have both of them in bass clef playing the same B octave, right? So that means that if you did that, then that would mean that this would be the fourth player on the bottom, the third player on top, and then there would be the identical thing above with the with the second player on the bottom and the first player on top. And that makes total sense to me. Rather than this, I just sort of think, it's kind of doing the 1-3-2-4 thing. But look, you might as well do it the right way, right? A lot of people want to save the hassle and everything, and I understand that. I think it's great. But look, this is a chance for you to practice that skill of doing 1, 2, 3, 4. I just think that that's a good default, unless you have a really strong reason. Like if you have a huge amount of compression, if you have first and third playing all the time together and doing these octave melodies and stuff like that, then that's fine. But just try to have that more normal, just for practice, okay? That's my suggestion. So layout was great, and scoring was really nice. You don't need the harp. Maybe pizzicato instead. And things were really dark at the beginning, but I like that. Okay, I thought that was really effective. Okay, so nice work. Really enjoyed this score. And now let's have a listen and a look at the next score. So this is a really cool score. I really love how this is all stripped down and how the functions of the instruments are really easy to hear, and also how nicely colored those functions are. Okay, so we've got cellos starting off. Now, I think that some of this goes a little fast to be all down bow. Do you know what I mean? You're going down, 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 down. And I think that that's just putting, I mean, especially when you've got accented staccato at the same time. You might have been able just to put, like, maybe marcato marks over this and get a very similar effect and not worried so much about, having to mark so many down bows. Like, you could have done the Stravinsky perpetual down bow on, like, maybe the first 4 notes of this melody, but then after a while it just gets to be a little insane. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it might be a bit much. But I like the combination of cellos, tuba, and bass clarinet. I think that's really cool. And I also love just that really reedy sound as all of these are combined together. The bass clarinet really has that kind of wonderfully creepy sound on the bottom. And then, of course, when you're combining the clarinets and the cor anglais together like this, that's also really lovely. Okay, I think it's excellent. I miss a little bit of doubling here, which is wondering if the bassoons could have come in a little earlier, right in here. But I mean, but it's still pretty cool, just the way that you got this all together. Yeah, I like this a lot. I mean, I'm going to run into entries where there isn't a whole lot to say other than, wow, gee, I wish that, in this case, I wish that this were a dotted brev entry, because then I could keep going in my evaluation and just make this into a bigger private lesson for you. However, there are things to give you some feedback about just for this first page. You'll probably notice that I upped the staff size and I sort of pulled things down a little bit, kind of changing the vertical sizing so that I could really maximize this and it would be really legible to somebody watching on a smaller screen. And that was pretty easy to do. Now, this is pretty interesting. The low C up against the B flat, which is different from the original tuning of A and B flat stuck together, but that's still pretty cool. You could have gotten a similar effect just by having the A, this A here at the bottom of the staff, as opposed to the, that sort of rock solid bottom note, which is really, playing the very bottom C extension or 5th string C. Sorry, I'm still getting over that cold. Apologies for all this throat clearing. But the low A here would have been more of a tuneful note, but like the low C is more of a percussive effect, really, almost like a big kind of bass drum or other kind of sound, or kind of inarticulate low A on, say, on a smaller model tuba. Now here, you could probably hear in the playback that fortissimo is too loud, really. And then I actually tried this with just forte, and it was too soft. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. What I would suggest is just bringing everything up, right? Making everything fortissimo or everything forte. Then you would just get a better balance all the way throughout. Okay? Because it kind of doesn't really make any sense to have the bass drum playing, fortissimo. It has a tendency to sort of drown everybody else out. Because remember, the bass drum is a tympanum, which is using the concert hall as its this kind of sounding box, right? So, yes, there is volume inside the bass drum, which helps to create resonance and everything else, but the real resonance is the entire space. That is why bass drums sound kind of, sort of kind of poundy and not really all that great in outdoors. When you're hearing a march and you're kind of hearing the bass drum come along and just going thump, thump, thump. That's because the outdoors, unless you're in a really resonant outdoor area, the outdoors really just absorbs that sound. The ground and the trees and the shrubs and everything else just kind of suck it up and don't really reflect it. But in a concert hall, the bass drum really kind of resounds, and it uses the concert hall as it's like you're inside a big guitar, and somebody is sort of tapping away at the wall of the guitar soundboard. That's really what's happening with the bass drum. So orchestration teachers commonly tell you don't mark up fortissimo for a bass drum unless you want to drown everybody else out. And it can be really true, right? So, but especially giving a much weaker instrument, in this case double bass, contrabassoon, and bassoon, a forte marking when you've got fortissimo in the bass drum just really, this is completely not balanced. If this were balanced by conductor, realistically speaking, everybody would be playing fortissimo and the bass drum would be playing forte. Okay? Now, you can mix it differently if you want to get a better effect, but I really feel that these are kind of underplayed. But they're very cool. Once again, I really love the way the melody is scored in this. I love the simplicity of it, and I think it's really nicely done. I'm just doubtful about how much fuss these players are going to, right? They are being asked to play staccato and an accent and play down bow on everything. And I think that in the end is just a little too finessed, right? It would be better just to, I would say, my instinct here would just be to marcato over everything. Forget about the down bows. Right? With the marcato, you get the accent and the staccato. And you can, at the beginning, you could say, altalone per possibile. Sorry for my horrible Italian pronunciation. Altalone per possibile. Right? So, in other words, down bow as much as possible from the frog. Okay, and then the player might say, okay, well, I won't go altalone for I'll go do it here, but like not there. And then if you have really good players, they might do it all the way through, like you're asking, right? But this is this first page is an arrangement that is ready to go to the stands. That's my judgment on this. Okay, so nice, nicely done, and I would just say adjust the dynamic slightly, and then you are ready to perform this. And once again, I wish this were a longa entry, dotted brev entry, so I could analyze the whole thing. But maybe next challenge around, okay? Because you put a lot of work into it, and it really deserves much more comments than I'm able to say just in these 10 minutes or so. All right, great work, George. Really loved it. Now on to the next score. Now we have Jeremy Cullen's entry, and as you can hear by that mock-up, which is, I would say, pretty accurate, considering everything, the way that mock-ups work, this is a really nicely done entry. I feel that it does everything that it wants to do and really brings a lot of functions and inflections into beautiful focus. Like, for instance, the way that the tenor drum is used alongside the timpani, and then those little second beat accents are brought out really nicely just simply with pizzicato in the lower strings and lower heavy brass, accents alongside the bass drum, and that is enough, right? It's really, really well and clearly stated. What else is cool is that it's enough just to put accents here without the accents before in the tenor drum and timpani. And it is, it really conveys the meaning of the firmness of that downbeat. As well as when the pizzicato, strummed, non-divisi, these are open strings, so very easy to play. And they really are more put there for their the weight of what they have to say rather than their tonality. Do you know what I mean? And that is also a really cool touch. Really, really like this a lot, Jeremy. You used a similar approach to me, but instead of having sevenths, you went for ninths. So, instead of E below and D above, you had D below and E above. And I think that that's also really, that's actually maybe in some ways better because you can hear the pitches a little bit better because they're a little farther apart. So, yeah, so nicely done there too. And then, of course, you come in, the first statement is made with like all of the low winds, and it's extremely effective, very cutting, and when you drop out with the cor anglais in this middle bar here, it doesn't really matter because everything else is so heavy and so pungent that it is fine. Now, this is the other thing that's cool is sustaining that low E throughout and not drowning out the second statement, right? That is a tough one, isn't it? Yeah, and I also like the way that you add tuba just right at the end of that opening statement, right? And it just really does give a lot of weight that's needed right there underneath, right? And everything else chugs along in terms of your rhythmic patterns. And then we hear the trombones and bass trombone play that lovely statement in an octave and a fifth type of voicing. And that is great. It's beautifully heroic, sort of mock heroic, and it stands out wonderfully from the mix. So that was a great innovation. Like I was saying all along, part of orchestration is adaptation, right? Not slavishly interpreting everything exactly the way it is in the score, but having some freedom to, add an octave, to add a harmonic quality to it that might not be there, that brings out more meaning. Now, moving on here, what you're hearing in the mock-up is pretty much the way that it's going to work, getting somewhat of an organ-like effect, and you built it right into the music, so I'm assuming that is what you want. Having flutes above, E-flat clarinet, doubling the top line there, that really does give that kind of overtone kind of a feeling, and then having the fifth tracking in the middle right there with the flutes, that is going to be, very much the way that you got it, just like this. I mean, I can almost envision the organ stops in my mind that I would put on my old Hammond B3 to try to get this sound. Having the kind of fatter sounds on the bottom and the thinner sounds on top that way, and especially with so much emphasis on the top there, and then having the fifth high up like that is going to give you that sound. Now, if you wanted to avoid it, then you've got to take away the fifth. You've got to rejig the way that you've got some of this voicing, right? But if you had wanted just people to suddenly kind of hear that organ-like sound, then you nailed it. That's really, really nicely done. Then these little blips in here, the contrabass, the cellos and violas, pizzicato, accented staccato. I don't think you really need the staccato there. You know what I mean? I think that the accents and the music is just going to give you what you need there. You don't really need the staccato mark at all. But it's enough to have staccato in your lower heavy brass, and the contrabassoon. That'll give you what you need. This is nice, this bum-ba-da, bum-ba-da. It's kind of hard to get this wrong, you know what I mean? Most people are scoring this pretty nicely. I like the slur down, and I like the way that this is all scored in here. This is nice, and the change here in the percussion, going to snare drum, suspended cymbal, and a thumb roll on the tambourine to this accent here. That is all really, really cool. And just a little bit of a roll on that D right there. It's kind of strange, though. You say D, C sharp, E, but don't you mean D, C sharp, D, E, right? So that, yeah, so then you change this around. I see. So you've got that there. Okay, that's all good. You might as well just ask for 4 timpani there, and then you get then you get the D, and you don't need to retune this, right? And then you have more going on there. I cut off a little bit at the end, but I just did that to sort of be able to maximize your score and just get exactly everything in up to the end of bar 21. Okay, well, look, really nice entry, and I really like the way that note performer seemed to capture a lot of your ideas very nicely, and yet still more or less faithfully interpret what this would sound like. I really love the bass clarinet and the cor anglais working together with the bassoon family. I thought that was beautifully dark and heavy, very Russian sounding. And especially the tuba coming in at the end there. This is all really fun scoring and very effective. And of course, a more subtle use of the way that timpani and these drums can work together, and all the more effective for that, right? Because of these accents really being able to stand out, and the open string pizzicato. So very cool score, Jeremy. I mean, there are a few more things that I could say about it. I like the muted horns, and once again, here's like an example of like more proper 1, 2, 3, 4 scoring, with the way that these octaves work out. And of course, the voicing of this is also more traditional to horn, the way that it's done. So yeah, so very cool throughout, nicely balanced. I think that this is pretty much ready to go to the stands. If this is what you want, then it's going to sound great. So great job, and yeah, if you can get an orchestra to play this, then go for it. Just score out the rest of the movement. Nice work. Now, on to the last score for this video. So, Arne's piece was a great way to start this video and to start off our whole set of evaluations here on the Orchestration Online YouTube channel. And this piece, as you might have just heard, is a great way to end this first video. I just love the absurdism, just the real freedom that Jerry is putting into this score. And not going for massive orchestral effects, but just like little random events. And I think it's just really fun, and like little added things like this glissando here going up to the F sharp to F sharp. And let's break it down. Okay, so you've got divisi double basses. You're assuming here that they have got the C extension, and they're just kind of slashing away. This could have been done technically, probably maybe a little less satisfying, but it could have been non-divisi, right, Jerry? Because you've got your open E string, and then you can finger the D on the C string, right? So this could have been non-divisi. Of course, this would be a little bit harder to play. Although the A, as some people have pointed out, well, look, what about what if you finger the B flat on the E string and then play the A open. Well, it makes a little bit of an imbalance there, but it is possible. But I wouldn't do it at this speed. So your divisi, is, although you don't need to do it, it probably is just better and able to handle this. Like you could say non-divisi up to here, and then it's like divisi here, just to make it a little simpler, or just like, of course, divisi all the way through, just to be on the safe side. That's fine. And then the little accents are just cello. Same exact approach. And then when the melody starts, you kick it off with this low timpani stroke. Now, I think trill is like a timpani roll on that note is way less effective than just going boom, right? I think just hitting it and letting it resound for a little bit is fine. But I think the trill is a little too much there. But then, side drum and cello, right? And you're setting up the expectation that the cello is going to take it forward a bit. But then tuba comes in and picks up the line. And then you have the reaction in the double basses, which, by the way, is not going to be as crisp as you're hearing it in your playback, right? It's going to be a little bit more clumsy and buffoonish, to be perfectly frank. Then the bassoons take over, dun 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 dun, and you've got a little bit of a roll here. Just really, really simple scoring, but very effectively chosen contrasting functions, right? And you get into this, and it's just really perfectly silly, and the trill going on, and a little bass drum stroke on top of that reaction. Then, starting off, cymbal crash. Once again, you don't need trill on the timpani, just boom. Continuing on with the double basses on the low function. And we've got cello and side drum again, continuing things on, but then giving over immediately to violas and horns. Yeah, so going on, flute trill. I love this little this little escapade here on timpani and side drum, setting up the trombone and, doubling with viola. This is going to be a little out of balance. You've got both of them at piano, so they are better able to balance, but it still is going to be, kind of tough to hear the viola on top of the, you're saying solo trombone. Trombonists are going to take that solo and run with it. It doesn't matter if it says piano or not. They're going to bring out their part, and the violas don't have much of a chance. It would be better to double this with cellos, right? Or cellos and violas. And then here you have a very, very firm, unison on all of these, these F octaves. It just really is going to, and then you have the piccolo mischievously playing way, way higher, 2 octaves higher than the trumpets. And that's really, really a fun sound. So, just really, really cool. I really do like this. And you're taking it to other places which are very, very fun too, towards the end. So really nicely done. I really love the sense of restraint. I love the sense of horseplay, and and it's just really, is it ready for stands? I would say you need to adjust a bit of the dynamics here, right? I don't think you can get away with having the dynamics the way that you've got them. If the lower strings are bashing away at forte, this needs to be at least mezzo forte crescendo, okay? And then the dynamics in the percussion all seem to be pretty good, right? So I would say you just need to bring out these notes a little bit more, right? This could be mezzo forte, these could all be forte without losing any sleep, right? Now here, as far as these are concerned, I would say, once again, bulk it up with a stronger support in the lower strings, if you really want a blended sound here, right? And this could all be mezzo forte, and that could be forte. And this cannot be. There's no way that the violas can contribute anything sensible, against the way that you got the horns scored there. They just don't. They can't compete. They cannot. They can blend, but then you need a better balance here. You would need the violas at forte and the horns at piano, right, or mezzo piano, and still you don't have both components of the harmony here. That's kind of what's throwing me on. Like, is this a C score or a? It is a C score because of the D sharps here, right? So better, good to tell me, good to let me know if you're not going to have any key signatures in the transposing instruments. Then I have kind of no way of telling unless I sort of compare the functions of the different parts, which I was being a little bit lazy there just because I'm tired and it's breakfast time over here and I'm thinking about that. So yeah, so if all you've got here is this A doubled by the violas, you really should have the top doubled by the second violins, and they should both be marked way up compared to the horns if you want to blend. Okay? And yeah, so here was the thing about the wrong component of harmony. If you want this to really support this EEDE, if you really want that to make more sense, then the notes below should be BBAB, not AAGA, right? Because by doing this, you are implying that the lower note, the fifth, right, that's where the tone is, and then the E's and the D's are window dressing. They're tracking at a fifth above. Rather than if you turn this into fourths, then that implies the inversion of the harmony, and the top note regains its sense of leadership. Okay, so that was the thing. So sorry, that was a bit of a sleepy, kind of very inexact, very unscholarly way that I was stumbling through this just a few minutes ago. Just kind of thrown slightly because I didn't have any reference for the for transposing or not. I'll try to remember that more, just like thinking about it before we dive into these things. But as just as much as this is the beginning of this round of evaluations, my own instincts are going to be slowly kind of kicking in and improving as I go through 50 scores, 52 scores now. So anyway, great work, Jerry. I really like it. Just adjust the dynamics a bit and, think about dynamic inflections a little bit if you can. Maybe add some staccato here to the strings, and I think you've got a really fun approach. And you could actually take this approach to your own original ideas or to some other arrangement if you wanted to. I mean, this would be really great, like cinematic or theatrical scoring. It's very, very fun. It would take some leadership from the conductor to really make sure that everybody comes in at the right time, because it's a series of a bunch of different cues of different sections and different players. So they're constantly having to look at different people and saying, hey, you're about to go, right? That is the difference between this and a more integrated score. And so it's a little bit more work for the conductor, but not fussy in terms of dynamic, except for like you marking these parts way, way down where they should be louder, right? Okay, great work, Jerry. So now I will end this video with thanks to all. Thanks to the Patreon supporters who made this whole challenge possible. And thanks to the website subscribers for being a great support throughout the years. That really is kind of how a lot of this started, my book and a lot of other projects. These orchestration challenges, those were really focused around the website to begin with. So it's great to come back to the website subscribers, that list, which is pretty big now, and reach out to them, have something special for them, invite more people from the other communities, the other components of the Orchestration Online community to join up with that. And, if you are sick of Facebook, so many people are getting sick of Facebook nowadays just because of, the way it's changed from a place where people sort of shared things about their careers and their families and everything else, to just really people arguing a lot about stuff that isn't going to make any difference tomorrow. And sometimes it's nice to get away from that. I mean, even though we have a nice, safe group, I sometimes I just completely ignore my personal feed, and I just spend all my time for like weeks just in the Facebook group. Occasionally things will pop up, and a friend will post something funny, and I'll comment on it or like it. But I'm just spending more and more time just in the group and not in my regular Facebook feed. And some people are just turning it all off just because it's just too much of a waste of time. But they do like to see what's going on the website, and that's fine. And then Twitter, I just barely have a presence on Twitter or Google Plus. So the subscribing to the website is a great way to sort of make sure, keep track of that. And I'm going to be keeping the newsletters more up to date and putting like what I feel is the most important activity of the community at least once a month, if not more. So anyways, that's my plug for the website subscription. Thanks all for contributing in this particular video. I hope you get a chance to see it, when it comes out, the day it comes out, which should be today. As I'm thinking of it, as I'm sitting here on a Wednesday morning in New Zealand, which would be Tuesday for the Western Hemisphere and Western Europe. And so thank you for making my life so fun for the next week with all of your cool entries. And I will see you in the next video.